one in California got an ugly brownish color.
It was hideous. Here's the thing, though.
Scheme that was more
I kind of like the red.
house than outer space.
The red and orange is my thing, baby.
Guests still love the ride itself.
Let's go on to something a little bit more lighthearted. I actually wanted to know a little bit about this because Disneyland over here had quite a few situations where they had to mess around with Space Mountain, and last time I went, they were still messing around with it. So I'm kind of curious to see why this freaking ride needs so much work over the years, bro. It's freaking absurd, and it has nothing to do with nothing. I just like machines. I like big machines, roller coasters and stuff. Let's check it out.
And colors. You may be looking at the title of this video thinking that it's clickbait. However, Disneyland did indeed destroy one of their biggest attractions completely by accident, forcing them to pretty much rebuild it from scratch. But what exactly happened to this coaster? Let's find out today.
Wait, so they actually broke it?
Crazy. Let's start off with a little background
about Space Mountain. Shout out to Theme Park Crazy, by the way, again.
The story of this coaster dates all the way back to the 1960s. Shortly after Disneyland's opening in 1955, Walt Disney was unhappy with how the Tomorrowland section of the park turned out. Budget constraints forced him to rely on sponsors to fund the land's development. This resulted in such forgettable attractions as the Kaiser Aluminum Hall of Fame, the Monsanto Hall of Chemistry, and the Crane Plumbing Company's Bathroom of Tomorrow. And of course I'm serious.
Bro, it's so interesting how even back then, there was like always such a big battle between corporate, like, money making, which is important. Yes, you definitely need to make money, like, otherwise how you gonna get the lights, keep the lights on, but also like the creative sort of like artistic side of things. And it's just so interesting to see this on such a huge scale, you know? Like, not for nothing, but has anybody heard about the Pomu Rain Puff, like VTuber agency, like split? I'm not saying nothing, I'm just saying I guarantee you the reason why that Pomu Rain Puff is leaving Nichi Sachi is because they're freaking pricks who keep, like, rejecting all the ideas that their VTubers keep having. So it's like, no duh, right? So it's just like, yeah, you want to be creative, but at the same time, you need the funds to do all the cool stuff you want to do. So it's such an interesting dynamic, isn't it?
Serious. The latter even had a valve turning ceremony that Walt Disney himself attended. Walt didn't have a problem with working with sponsors, but he felt the obvious product placement greatly interfered with his vision of Tomorrowland. So in the early 1960s, he started thinking of ways to improve the land. Looking at the recent success of the Matterhorn bobsleds, Walt was interested in building another large-scale coaster. Eventually, he approached his Imagineers with the idea of a massive-scale roller coaster themed to space. This proposed attraction, named Spaceport, would be an indoor-outdoor coaster hybrid much like the Matterhorn. However, the project was canned due to technical limitations at the time.
That is interesting. So initially it was intended to be an inside and outside, which would have been awesome. But I feel like it would lose a lot of the magic if it went outside during the daytime, would it not?
And after Walt's death in 1966, his Imagineers refocused their attention on the upcoming Disney World project in Florida. Eventually, Disney World's first theme park, the Magic Kingdom, opened in 1971. Its layout was much like that of Disneyland, and it too featured a Tomorrowland section. Unfortunately, this Tomorrowland was also criticized for its lack of exciting attractions. In fact, the only rides it debuted with were the Skyway and the Grand Prix Raceway. What the land, and the park as a whole, needed was a—
Oh, how quickly after Walt was buried in the ground did they immediately start to just ruin everything?
Major A-list attraction. More specifically, it needed a big thrill ride to appeal to teenagers and young adults. While a copy of the Matterhorn was originally considered, spatial limitations drew Imagineers back to the scrapped Spaceport project. The roller coaster would be redesigned to be entirely indoors. After years of construction and planning, the new ride would make its debut to the public in 1975. The coaster was an instant success, and it led Disney to build a second Space Mountain.
It is interesting that they kept just a bit of the design, but they really did, like, shorten the scale right down, didn't they? But you can still kind of see the twists, you know, the twists that were supposed to be there from the original design. That's cool, my dude. That's freaking sick.
In California, though there would be a few differences with the one in Florida. While the Magic Kingdom Space Mountain featured 2 separate tracks, spatial limitations forced the Disneyland version to stick with 1 track. Supposedly to make up for the reduced capacity, the trains were designed to seat 2 people per row, as opposed to the Magic Kingdom single-file seating. Moreover, the presentation of the ride area was far grander than the one at Disney World. This coaster pretty much had its own pavilion, complete with a stage for live performances.
Oh, and I don't know about the stage, like, I don't know if those are still used, but yeah, if you go to Space Mountain, there is so much available walkway, oh my goodness.
Restaurant and an arcade.
Especially when it gets really busy during the Halloween time.
The initial speed
oh
ramp
my
that was
goodness.
part of the queue. This covered
they
speed
use
ramp
all
added
that queue, bro.
anticipation to the ride, and it's still a great source of nostalgia for longtime fans. The new project would cost a whopping $20 million to build, which was more than the $17 million it cost to build the entire park in the 50s. In the end though, the new ride was worth it, drawing a new attendance record of 185,000 people in just 3 days. Over the years, the coaster would operate as it was without many changes. That was until the mid-1990s, when the ride would undergo its most significant alterations. Around that
Dude,
time
I remember
period,
all those commercials with the freaking stuffed, not the stuffed animals, with the freaking mascots and the
vision
suits.
Of the future from the 1960s had become
Damn,
dated.
still sick.
At the same time, they didn't want to spend too much money on refurbishment.
That's more money than I've ever seen in my life, dude.
Euro Disneyland,
wow.
Disney was hurting financially and was looking
Y'all
to
saw
cut
that?
costs. After Paul Pressler's appointment as Disneyland's head executive in 1994, efforts were made to save money. The desire to update Tomorrowland at the lowest cost possible proved to be a huge problem in the mid to late 90s, as quick fixes and penny pinching became the norm. In addition to costly classic attractions like the People Mover and Submarine Voyage closing, other existing attractions were given makeovers to save money on new big ground-up rides. One ride that was updated was Space Mountain. Around 1995, although some sources say it was 1994, FedEx took over sponsorship of the ride from RCA. Soon afterwards, in 1996, several changes were implemented to the ride experience. The queue area and ride station were revamped, adding a robotic FedEx worker and several television monitors. The monitors presented a compilation of skits that parodied television programs, including sci-fi themed commercials, a weather report, and of course, a FedEx ad. A new pre-show was added as well, which was pretty much a standard ride safety
FedEx,
video.
dude.
Around this time, the fan-favorite speed ramp was also removed, reportedly due to concerns about guest traffic. These changes, though, were minor compared to the ride
FedEx losing your packages even in space!
For the renovation, the coaster received newly designed trains. While they largely resembled the old ones, these vehicles had a distinctive new feature, a set of speakers on each seat to provide onboard audio.
Oh, okay, that's cool too, I guess.
A year earlier in 1995 at Euro Disneyland, then renamed Disneyland Paris. That year, they premiered their own rendition of Space Mountain named Space Mountain From the Earth to the Moon at the park's Discoveryland area. Disney collaborated with Dutch manufacturer Vekoma on the attraction. The ride was not only much more intense with a launch in 3 inversions, but it also featured a first-of-its-kind onboard audio system. Through the use of speakers on each seat, a soundtrack was able to be perfectly synced up with the ride's layout. This ride, much like the original Space Mountain, was an instant success, and many credit it with saving Disneyland Paris from going under. It's worth noting though that with Paris's Space Mountain, Disney spared no expense, as they were aiming to boost park attendance after a dismal underperformance. In fact, the company spent over $90 million on the new coaster. Of course, with an ongoing effort to cut costs on everything else, California's Space Mountain
over 4 times the amount.
No such budget. Aside from the new audio system, no major changes were made to the ride, and the layout was exactly the same, with the same track. To its credit, the new onboard audio was very well received. Specifically, the soundtrack was a collaboration between composer Aaron Richard and show producer Eddie Soper.
And let's be honest, the music on roller coasters makes the freaking ride.
And surfing elements.
Oh, good freaking track!
Sounded as
on an awesome roller coaster is everything, my dude.
The end result was amazing. The soundtrack was a perfect fit for the attraction, and park fans still praise it today. With the soundtrack in place, Space Mountain was given a new burst of flavor. On the downside, it was soon given a new paint job in 1997. The idea was to give it a similar paint scheme to Paris's Discoveryland, but instead of an interesting steampunk design like the one in Paris, the one in California got an ugly brownish color.
It was hideous. Here's the thing though,
scheme that was more
I kind of like the red.
house than outer space.
The red and orange is my thing,
Nevertheless,
baby.
guests still loved the ride itself, and it continued to operate unchanged for the next few years. Things were looking good for a while, but in the year 2000, the ride suffered a notable accident. On August 2nd of that year, a wheel assembly came loose from one of the ride vehicles. This gave guests on board a sudden jolt as the ride reportedly came to a violent stop. All 9 passengers on board were sent to the hospital, though none were badly injured. A few more years went by, and then in 2003...
Bro, it's stuff like that that just makes you wonder, bro. Like, you freaking go to Disneyland for one little freaking ride, and then you Ayoo, Masuda, or Bas. I keep freaking going by your full name. It sounds so messed up when I say your full name. Ayoo, Bas. Yeah, no, it's like, can you imagine just going for a ride? Like, yeah, you it's freaking Disneyland. Kids, you know, you worked all year, you freaking saved up money, you freaking don't want to go, but the kids want to go, and you already got the tickets a month ago. So you freaking go, and then you leave at the end of the day, you're like, well, I got spinal fractures now.
A troubling discovery was made. On April 10th of that year,
so one time that you've been saving up all your sick days.
Ride out of nowhere. Usually, Disney announces ride refurbishments in advance in order to let guests plan ahead. But in this case, Space Mountain's problems were clearly glaring enough to suddenly shut down the attraction. Shortly thereafter, the park announced that the ride would be closed for 2 years, which caught many park fans off guard.
I love how photoshopped that helmet looks on
down a ride for. So what happened? Apparently, the ride had become structurally compromised due to the vehicles. The problem was that the onboard audio system made the train substantially heavier. Meanwhile, the track and support structure were the exact same as they were in the 1970s.
I got you, boy. I put you in the collab.
This old track was now tasked with the burden of having to carry ride vehicles that were way heavier than what it was designed to handle. Slowly but surely, the structure was straining and struggling.
How many times has Disneyland made this same exact freaking mistake where they just keep making the cars way too freaking heavy?
Under the weight of these vehicles.
Like, bro!
Moreover, the ride was apparently so far beyond
They did it with this, they did it with the freaking, the Ford, like...
scratch, the whole thing. As fan site
car one,
they did it with the freaking,
ripping out the one that like goes all around future Tomorrowland.
The metal was set to fatigue,
like he's still there, the track's still there, but they don't use it.
Riders aboard it. The roller coaster closed before such a tragedy happened. So yes, Disney accidentally destroyed one of their biggest attractions and nearly turned it into a death trap in the process. When it gets to the point that you have to rebuild an entire attraction, you know you've seriously messed up. Thankfully, Disney was more than willing.
Yeah, no duh! Why would you frickin'... And it was unnecessary! It's like... We went to Disneyland with no fast pass. It was not fun. Dude! Good. That's not good. Disneyland is not only so freaking stuffed, dude, but it is so overpriced. There's a reason why we go to Knott's Berry Farm now.
Willing to make the necessary changes,
which I recommend you go. Boysenberry tastes good.
Who had worked on Space Mountain in Paris, was brought on board to provide the track. And
I'm trying to think. Is there any? But I'll say this, if you ever go to Disneyland for like the Halloween stuff, holiday stuff, the rides are also open, and there's a lot less people typically because they have a set limit of tickets. So I'm not saying, you know, you have to, like that's like the way to go or anything, but if you ever do have to go and you're trying to avoid all those lines, trust me, the Halloween time, like I've gone to the Halloween ticket thing, where they're like, it's basically just the same exact thing, but at night, and they just have a bunch of like little booths, where the kids can like go trick or treat and they'll give them candy. Employees will give them candy. It's really nice. It's cool and all for like the kiddos, and then like the bigger kiddos can like go on the rides, and then you as an adult can just sort of, I don't know, be on Tinder swiping right on everyone on your phone all day.
Engineers worked around the clock to get Space Mountain back in
I'm
operation.
joking. You go
Finally,
get yourself a turkey leg
the roller
and a
coaster
churro,
reopened
like
to the
a real
public.
Disney adult.
A new set of trains were provided,
and
with
a
the
slushie
onboard
and a corn
audio
dog.
still intact. Though unfortunately, the original soundtrack
Boys Night
was
Out, let's go
phased out.
Disneyland,
More
yeah!
importantly, though, the track was properly engineered to handle the weight of the
We're gonna do it on the,
Today,
what's that
Space Mountain
Disneyland game where you
operation
freaking,
as one of
the
resort's
Xbox Connect
top
one where you get to
thrill
go to the real
rides.
Disney, but
Unlike
it's
Rocket
Avatar?
Rod, this story does have a happy ending, but when it comes to Disney theme park mistakes, there are still plenty of them to talk about. If you have an idea for a future video, feel free to comment down below and I may feature your comment in that video. Now it's time for the comment shoutout program. This is where I take 5 random comments from my previous video and read them out. These comments are from my video on Disney's Rocket Rods ride. Doug says, I never knew how much I wanted a Living with the Land Rapids ride until now. Gittner says, I love the Rocket Rods, one of my grandfather and I's favorite rides when it ran. Chris C says, this video absolutely nailed it. The ride itself was actually fun, but not worth more than a half-hour wait. And it broke down so much that in around 5 visits to Disneyland when it was open, I only rode it twice. And yeah,
when every freaking line is like 45 minutes, it's like you can only get on so many rides. You gotta really go to the rides that you're like, for sure, you know nobody wants to get on, nobody gets on. Like the Pinocchio ride. Nobody ever gets on that one. I'll go to that one a lot.
They could have easily
that was terrifying.
The People Mover to go with the retro
the Alice in Wonderland one, surprisingly short lines. I don't know why.
Successful and still in operation.
It's freaking sick. I love it.
Liam Collinson
Those
says,
old rides of Pinocchio, Wonderland,
had a cool idea like this, that they would not bother until there is enough money
Neverland.
Instead of cheaping out. It feels like when money is short, everything becomes
and
half
the
ours.
Chinese
and
president
Miranda
one,
Turner says,
Winnie the Pooh,
Rocket
that
Rods
one, I love all those. Those are really cool. Those are my
favorite.
favorites.
The next time I went to Disneyland after it was closed, I was so beyond devastated. If you want to see your words in my next video, leave a comment down below and it may be selected. Please note, though, that inflammatory or spam comments
for real, though. Oh, yeah, VR chat has a Disneyland, don't it? Freaking, I gotta get a new VR headset. Mine's too freaking old.
Again, at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe.
Eventually,
if you want to follow me on social media, you can check out...
Ayoo, be sure to join the crew. Please like, follow, and subscribe. And hey, if you like that video, you should check out this stuff.